There is nothing more frustrating as an analyst, handicapper, predictor, whatever you guys want to call me, than when you do research on a specific a matchup and a fighter, and you see a clear path to victory for those fighters, and they just refuse to utilize that approach. And even when they do inside the fight and are successful with it, they are just not as urgent with utilizing it more often. And that was the case with Melissa Mullins last time around, and probably one of the more frustrating performances that we've ever seen from a fighter. You already have a win over Daria Zalesniakova, and you know how you got that win. But no, let's try to go out there and strike with a better striker. And that's what Melissa Mullins gets, and that's what we get for trusting her to go out there and try to replicate something she's already done, and we are forced to rip up our Locky two-step there. So frustrating, especially when we cashed Rafael Fiziev as an underdog in the Locky two-step, and that would have clashed a plus 187 parlay for us. Jamal Hill doesn't obviously do the thing in the Locky Trinity, so we have to rip up that ticket anyway, but I am so bitter about Melissa Mullins fumbling the bag against Daria Zalesniakova, and it seems like a lot of people in the betting space were all over Mullins and knowing that this was the best way for her to win, yet she chooses to go the path less traveled, the way that you're going to face more resistance, and she ends up losing and forcing us to rip up our Locky two-step. But hopefully the two fighters that I've chosen in the Locky two-step and the third fighter I've chosen from the Locky Trinity for UFC 317 are a little bit better in terms of following a better game plan and showcasing where they can exploit their opponents in specific areas of the mixed martial arts game, and they can get their hand raised. So we can come out happy from UFC 317, that knowing that we've cashed a Locky two-step and Locky Trinity. All right. Let's get right into it. First step up in the Locky two-step is going to be Tracy Cortez as she goes up against a improving but also aging Viviane Araújo. Now, Araújo came in against Karine Silva last time around as an underdog and pulled off the upset, but I think where Silva was struggling to get to her grappling because of her lack of wrestling, that's where Cortez is going to be able to get the better of Araújo. Now, neither woman is super threatening in terms of seeking finishes, and I think that will allow Cortez to be a little bit more competitive in the striking realm, but then from there I expect her to get this fight to the ground, establish her wrestling, and start wearing Araújo down as we get into deeper water. And I feel Cortez can make this look very easy if she just goes out there and wrestles. And that's what she's known to do. Her striking is not that bad, and she can be competitive in the striking realm. But if she wants to go the path of least resistance, go to the wrestling. And I trust her that she'll be able to do that. The second step in the Locky two-step is going to be Gregory Rodriguez as he goes up against the returning and another aging fighter in Jack Hermansson. Now, Hermansson is coming off that upset victory over Joe Pyfer from February of 2024, and he's been on the sidelines ever since, dealing with numerous injuries. He's had shoulder surgery, rehabs, all that stuff. And now he's going up against a Rodriguez who's looking to wipe the taste out of his mouth from that loss that he suffered to Jared Cannonier in a main event slot just a few months ago. But I think this is a great matchup for Rodriguez to go out there and do what he does best. Put together his power punching approach, take command of the cage, and maybe even mix in some wrestling and some grappling if he can. But I think he'll be able to keep Hermansson on his back foot, continuously move forward, cut off the cage if he needs to, if Hermansson wants to play that game like he did against Chris Curtis and Joe Pyfer. But I think Rodriguez is good enough to go out there and thwart that approach here from Hermansson and win this fight on the scorecards. So earlier this week, when I dropped this parlay to the when I dropped the Locky two-step to the Patreon folks earlier this week, they were able to lock it in at plus 109. A little bit of action on both of these fighters has now brought that parlay down to plus 101. Again, perfect example of why you should jump on the Lock of the Night Patreon page, not just for the Locky two-step and the Locky Trinity, but all the other great content that we got, from the written breakdowns to the degenerate parlays, the props. We cover so much on there. So make sure you guys check it out. The MMA, LOT, and Patreon page, link in the description below. All right, let's get to the Locky Trinity now. If you want to complete it, you're going to put those two first steps together and throw in Beneil Dariush to round out the Locky Trinity as he goes up against Renato Moicano. Now, this is a matchup originally scheduled for January, but after Arman Tsarukyan pulled out on weigh-in day, in stepped Renato Moicano, and Dariush was left without an opponent. Now he gets a second training camp and opportunity to go up against Moicano, who got pulverized by Islam Makhachev back in January. But I think Dariush can utilize a similar approach where he is the better striker. He's also a crafty enough submission specialist and grappling specialist that he can thwart anything Moicano wants to throw with him or throw at him in that realm. Moicano's not this crazy one-punch knockout artist, so I'm feeling pretty good about the possible durability issues of Dariush, and I think that will allow him to dictate the pace of this matchup, and I think it actually comes down with him finishing this fight in the second or third round. But I love him in this spot. I was able to lock him in earlier this week at an underdog price, and now he's getting close to that pick'em line, maybe even end up being a favorite by fight time. But when I locked it into the Patreon folks earlier this week, they were able to lock in this 3-leg parlay at plus 311. Now it's sitting down at plus 286. So a little bit of steam there, but still worthy of being able to play this parlay, and hopefully it cashes for us. All right. I'll be back tomorrow for the Cage Warriors 191 a breakdown, as well as the prop drop for UFC 317. See you guys then. Peace.